Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume.
And I'm Scott McCandless. It is the week of June 12th, and this is your Monday briefing.
Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee last week released an economic growth legislative package and plan to mark it up in committee on Tuesday. Chairman Dave Camp and Janice Mays join us to share their insights on this draft legislation. Chairman Camp and Janice, welcome.
Well, thank you. Great to be with you all.
Thanks a lot.
So, Janice, let me start with you. What are some of the key provisions of this economic growth package?
For the business community, the legislation includes those three TCJA business legacy tax increases: Section 174 R&D amortization, Section 163J's limits on the interest deduction, the loss of the DA, and bonus depreciation phase out. For all three of those, it would repeal those tighteners back to their starting dates and forward through 2025. It includes repeal of the Superfund tax. It includes an override of some of those new regulations on foreign tax credits where there's no bilateral tax treaty. And it also includes several small business, pass-through business provisions, as well as a repeal of about a third of those energy tax credit incentives that the Democrats enacted last year in the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically the expansions of the PTC, the ITC, and the clean energy provisions for electric vehicles.
Chairman Camp, even if this bill were to pass the House, it is not likely to pass the Senate. So what role might it be expected to play in tax negotiations later this year?
Well, as Janice pointed out, this legislation has a number of key provisions that are important to the business community, important to members, and important to stakeholders around the country. So I expect the markup in the committee will go forward this week. The difficulties on the floor last week, I don't think will impact that. But this will be important. This package of bills will really be a framework for negotiations with the Senate and the administration later on this year as we get toward the end of the year. But also this will be a marker for 2025 when some of the individual tax provisions expire. And lastly, members of the House particularly are always campaigning, and these will be important issues for them to deliver on and to discuss and talk about as they continue in the public debate. But it really sets this sort of framework for negotiations going forward in a number of ways.
So, Janice, let me come back to you. The cost of this bill would be offset by repealing provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act, such as green energy credits. So what impact can this have on companies that may be seeking to take advantage of those credits in the meantime?
Those clean energy credit limitations that they put on are a subset of what the House Republicans already included in their original debt limit package that passed the House with Republicans only. And they both, a number of them, disagree with the policy of giving incentives to move from fossil fuels to these other energy items. And they think the cost is too high. So you'll keep seeing this from them as these years go on. But with a Democrat in the White House as president and Democrats in control of the Senate, these aren't going to become law these 2 years. And in 2025, every single provision of the tax code is in some jeopardy of changing at that point as those 2017 individual tax cuts expire and other things. So from rates on down, you're going to see some change at this point. So if I were a business right now, I would be continuing to go about my business. And if I wanted to use these energy credits, I would move apace to do that. It's much harder to undo a provision when business is already using it than it is in the abstract to repeal something in the future.
And Chairman Camp, you mentioned a moment ago that there were some concerns on the House floor last week. That seems to be a result of lingering concerns flowing out of the debt ceiling deal. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it might impact other legislation moving through the House in the future?
Well, the House of Representatives is a little different than the Senate. That legislation can't come to the floor without some procedural items being discussed, like the length of debate and what amendments may be offered. So it's called a rule, which is really a procedural matter. And it is expected that that members of the majority party will vote and support a rule. That didn't happen last week. We know we have a very narrow majority in the House that will make it potentially difficult going forward as we move into the appropriations process this summer if they can't at least set the terms of the debate and bring legislation forward for discussion. I'm sure this is something the leadership will have to work out over the next several weeks. We've seen this play before in the Republican Party, where there's a disagreement about how to move forward. And I think the real issue there is, does the current leadership have an ability to kind of get the team back together and move this legislation forward? But I expect that they will work very hard this week to try to do that. But there are divisions clearly on the Republican side. It has been a fractious conference in the past. And I think there's going to be a lot of work going forward to make sure they can continue to govern. And that really will be the issue. They'll have to find a way to move forward and set those disagreements aside if they want to continue to move forward to implement kind of the parameters of this debt limit agreement that they came to just a short time ago.
Well, Chairman Camp and Janice, there aren't many people in town who have actually run a Ways and Means Committee hearing or markup. You have done that, and it's just a joy to have you with us. Thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for inviting us.
And for our viewers, in case you missed it, included in the email with this episode is the latest Week in Review with Chairman Camp. And look for a special episode later this week diving deeper into the House Republicans' economic growth package.
Also included is my interview with George Manousis on a recent IRS guidance providing temporary penalty relief related to the corporate AMT. You won't want to miss that. Thank you as always for watching, and stay with Policy on Demand for the latest developments in Washington and around the world. Take care.